Welcome to Surviving the Workplace, everything they didn't teach you in school. We here at USF Corporate Training and Professional Education, we help you with your professional development, with your upskilling, with your reskilling. Do you want a new career? Do you want to change your career? We are the place to go. We handle everything from human resources, project management, paralegal, leadership and management, anything you could want, we've got it covered. I don't want to take any more time from Kelly. Kelly, will you please come on screen so I can stop talking and you can start teaching?
Welcome, everybody. So super glad you're here. Let me pull these up. Okay, so we have a lot to go through. I'm glad he's going to give you the slides because we are covering this at a pretty quick pace today. Let me get here. Okay, so the workplace can be respectful, engaging, and even fun, but it's the people that drive us crazy. So we're going to talk about how to make that easier. And sometimes the people that get in the way of us are ourselves. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we end up sabotaging ourselves. And I want to give you some real life tips with it. But first, the hard truth here. It is your employer's workplace. They get to decide the hours where you're working. They get to decide what the rules are. But it's your job. It's your career. You get to choose every day when you vote with your feet whether you wish to go in there or not. So let's just remember that. It is their workplace. So I'm going to give you 30 plus tips in less than 30 minutes. Some of the slides are much wordier than I use, but I wanted you to have everything. And so my resources are on the last page. Otherwise, I'll stop and talk about all of them. This is our agenda, and so you can tell we're jam-packed. So let's just kick off with some dress codes here right away. So understanding that first day, what does a dress code look like at your place? Perhaps you saw it for the interview. Perhaps you got a handbook ahead of time. Perhaps you logged on and got to see some things on Glassdoor and you could ask the question, or to somebody on LinkedIn. But do a little bit of research, because you do want to dress to impress. You want to dress. That old adage of dressing for the next position is not unreasonable still. And there's business casual, but there's something kind of coming in called smart casual. And smart casual is business casual, but with your own flair. So you might wear, black pants, and you might wear a quarter zip, or you might wear a shirt, but you're wearing a scarf, or you're wearing something that's much you, that brings upon your own style. And so smart casual is sort of the words that are coming here in the future. But you want to dress a little more formal when you've got some meetings coming up. You want to be able to show respect, because it shows respect for colleagues. If you're in a customer meeting, or in your meeting, you're making a presentation with a team, you don't want it focused on what you're wearing. We want it focused on the team's accomplishments and the presentation. And so that's how we're going to influence perceptions of what it is we bring. I had a boss one time who, when I became a corporate officer, said, "You're getting a really nice chunk of change in this raise." He said, and I know you're super creative. I was very bohemian in my dress. And he said, I did HR and communication, so I have a creative side to me. And he said, take part of it and buy some conservative suits. And he did that not because he was dissing me, but he did it because he knew that he wanted the board to hear what I was going to be saying. And so it influenced what they were hearing from me. And that's why it was important. He was trying to help me succeed. And I took him up on that. You can do those subtle style expressions, and you can avoid, it might be socks. You just you have crazy socks, and that's what you wish to do. But it really shouldn't be so over the top. You're not going to a club. You're going to work. And so you want to be able to dress that way. But if it is more casual for that day, or you think you're going to be in, keep some backup clothes and shoes. I actually usually kicked my heels off and wore slippers if I was sitting at my desk for most of the day, and then had to do that sort of quickly change into it when I needed to. But it does help. I mean, I've spilled coffee all over myself before, so it is possible to have all of that happen. So whatever you wear, you don't want to be sloppy. You want to be sure whether it's a casual day or whether it's casual Friday, you want to be sure that it's still tidy, it's still clean, you didn't pull it out of the laundry bin. And I come from the days where sometimes the club stamp was still on the back of my hand, even though I showered and it was still there. But that's just the sort of the way it was. Grooming, though, doesn't cost you anything. Just make sure you got your hair combed and you have really been able to give that first impression that they're not going, oh, wait, what are we smelling here? I can tell you, I get so many calls as an HR professional and as a consultant to businesses saying, Kelly, can you come in and talk to this person? And let me tell you, sometimes that goes very high into the workforce. Nobody wants to have a conversation with you about personal hygiene. Nobody. I don't. But that's what they pay me to do. And so that's what I do sometimes. Okay. So let's talk about desk side etiquette and manners, including in the cube. It's just like you're on an airplane. You're not going to pull out something that you shouldn't be microwaving. So don't bring the fish from the night before. It leaves a smell that certainly can be bad. Don't put in the refrigerator. Don't take in what's not yours. And, you know, if people, and you can see it online, there's all sorts of things where people have left things or put X-lax in things or less breast milk inside and put that in there and then put a note later saying, you know, whoever's stealing it, I hope you enjoyed it. So don't do that. Just don't do that. And you really shouldn't be eating at your desk anyways. They say that keyboards are actually worse than toilet seats. So you know, go eat, go out to your car, go somewhere else to eat. Keep that workplace tidy, keep it clutter-free. It's not your home. It's your workplace. It doesn't mean you can't have stuff out, but at the end of the day, shove it in a drawer, get rid of it, whatever you might have, not pictures or all those sorts of things, but you do want to be sure that if they're walking people around or a new hire around, they don't go, oh, who is this? Is this, you know, Charlie Brown's friend Pigpen that's kind of got all this going on with them? So just keep it organized. It sends a reflection of you as well. Headphones for music or for videos. Now, I think we're working on getting the workspace where they understand returning to work does not mean everybody sits in their desk and puts Zoom and is on Zoom the whole day and never interacts with a person. So instead, just make sure that if you're listening to music, or sometimes if you just want to make sure you're not interrupted, you can put your headphones on and people will realize maybe that's it. So, you know, sometimes you can fudge it a little bit if you just need to get some quiet time with it. Don't go stealing people's staplers. You know, ask them if you can borrow it. Don't go taking the 3-hole punch if you need it. And, you know, fill up the printer with paper if you're over there, just like you should make the coffee if you're a coffee drinker. But people like the red staplers. And if you haven't seen Office Space, you need to go do that. But the people like those red staplers. So please make sure that you are paying attention and asking permission. These might seem so basic, but it's not happening. Maintain that professionalism and don't overshare, especially in open spaces. People are absolutely listening. And from some of the emojis that are coming through, I can see that this is not totally new stuff for you. You guys are all dealing with this. So I can see that, but don't have all of that. Be mindful of interrupting. People go in and go, do you have 1 minute? It's never just 1 minute or 1 second. It's never that. And if you were at the last month's seminar, you know that we talked about how to get rid of some of those people who constantly interrupt. But you do want to be able to say things like, you know, can I get back with you? I'm really focused right now. So it's going to take you 25 minutes to just get back. And you want to be able to say, hey, I'm going to take a coffee break in 15 minutes. Why don't I meet you? Or I'm going to have tea in 15 minutes. Why don't we go, you know, try and do that? When I worked in the UK, that's one of the things I loved was to sit down and to have tea. It just gave you a moment and it just seemed to relax completely. So let's talk about office lingo. Now, we talked about communication and not oversharing, especially in public places. It's not the social media piece, but let's talk about some of these acronyms. And some of them still pop up. People have acronyms within their own businesses. And many of the companies I work with will have a glossary or a terms list that they will give people when they start with onboarding or even ahead of time. Because there are things, especially if you've ever worked in defense contracting, that people say all the time and nobody has any idea what you're talking about. But that's okay to be able to ask. So things like as soon as possible, which by the way, I personally hate. It is not a date. And your as soon as possible might be different than my as soon as possible. So don't do that. And so you want to use FYI. It's just for their information. There's no action. Out of office, end of day, close of business are frequently used in those. And you want to use those and make sure that there's something accurate as to when something is due. My suggestion is no ASAP ever. Avoid that completely. You want to have clarity in those emails. Keep it to a point. Do not write 7-paragraph emails. I have been guilty of that myself, but don't do that. At the same time, don't write a text full of emojis because then we can't figure out what's happening with it. But you do want to be timely. Even if you say thanks or got it or something like that, you might be like, well, can't they just read it in their delivered receipts? Every time you can be in front of them, it puts your name that you're responsive. I used to reply to people when they asked for my opinions about things in the office. I always replied because I was humbled that they asked my opinion. And one time I asked one of the people, I said, you always ask my opinion. Can I ask what makes you do that? She said, because you always respond. I know I can get information from you because you're helpful that way. Whether she agrees with it or not, I always responded and she respected that. And I never knew that. We actually do this at my house as well because I will send information out, in a text or something, and then I hear nothing. So now I get ACK, meaning acknowledged. So I'll take it, whatever it takes. Sometimes what we have at work is what we have at home as well. But it does certainly help if we just acknowledge that we got it. I mentioned not too many memes, not too many. Yes, it's casual, and I include smiley faces or just funny things sometimes, but we need to cut it back a little bit because it's work. Now let's talk about CC, BCC, and do not use reply all, because not everybody wants your email there. CC actually comes from the words of carbon copy, from the old days of typewriters, where you would put an onion sheet, is what they called it, and it had carbon paper between it, and you would actually have as many as you were going to pass out. So if there were 5 people who were going to be carbon copied, you had 5 of those sheets in the typewriter for it to go through. So those words come from kind of older days, just like our keyboard comes from those days, so that the keys themselves didn't get jammed up. That's why it's positioned the way it is. BCC means, hey, I am blind copying you. I might want my boss to know I replied, but I'm hiding it. If you're going to send a mass email out, you are going to want to blind copy. Put all of those in the blind copy, send it to yourself. It'll go to all the blind copied folks, but they won't have the people's emails if you're doing that. But it does help to be able to do that. But don't do reply all. I don't care if somebody else did it. Move them into, the copy or even do a blind copy, but my goodness, don't do that. It's just silly. And it looks like no one has accountability at your company. If you don't understand something, ask a question. I had that happen on a LinkedIn post the other day about hiring somebody, and it said just, I don't know, it was show up or show out or shout out or something like that. And I said, I have no idea what that means. I think I know, but I'm not sure. And somebody got on and said, okay, this is what it means. And it was what I thought it meant. But I was so appreciative that they just took that and helped me understand what it is. So ask the question. In 8 months after it's been used, that's not the time to do it. So let's talk about awkward moments. Not that we ever have such a thing, but how to end small talk. Be polite, but let them know that you need to work on your time, just like we had chat about. If you forget someone's name, admit it and ask them again, and then work to try to remember it, but ask them. And Dale Carnegie says, you know, people like to hear their names when they're being chatted with. So just, it creates a little point of vulnerability going, I've met so many people. Could you remind me your name, please? Own mistakes. Accountability is very sexy in the workplace, appropriately sexy. So acknowledge those mistakes. It helps build trust. But also, no is a complete sentence. If you don't know how you're going to add value to a meeting, then reach out to whoever's scheduling that meeting and saying, you know, I'm not sure I should be there. I don't know what value I'll add. Can you tell me? And if not, you're welcome to send me the notes. And be able to not let everybody else fill up your calendar just because. You want to respect other people's privacy and their behavior. Don't go walking into their cube or their office, or even if they're in a conference room, or stand right next to them. Even if you have cultural nuances, be careful of those. But, you know, just being able to be mindful of their own personal space. But you will have encounters with those people in the workplace, and you're going to see them on an escalator in the parking lot or wherever it might be. And, you know, polite gestures like nodding or smiling, and just be able to recognize them, not being on your phone, but eyeball to eyeball, make contact with somebody. You don't know who you're meeting, might be the very next boss you have, and be able to say, how are you? Or some of that little chit chat helps you build that rapport with folks. So don't ignore them, because we're trying to build professional relationships and your brand, your reputation. It isn't just your boss and your department, but it needs to go across the department, and it needs to be building that network of people going, hey, they're pretty good. Let's get them on this project. Why don't you invite them into the meeting? Then writing thank you notes. Now, you can just do it in an email, but quite frankly, I really love handwriting notes, and I try to do that when possible. I used to be very, very good at it. Somebody told me once to write 5 of them every week, and I would not leave the office until I wrote 5 by Friday. Sometimes they were all on Friday, but I wrote them, and I talked about, as head of HR, you know, congratulations on getting the A. I saw it come across when we were paying the tuition bill. Way to go. You know, congratulations on working on that project. Thank you for making sure our customers felt really welcomed as they came in from Australia. They love your stuff. It's amazing. I had someone who I went to their house after a funeral, and the employee's spouse took me into the garage and showed me on his Craftsman, because we used to make those Craftsman cabinets, he had taped up the thank you note I had handwritten, and on it I had also said, thank your family for their tolerance while you go through schooling, and because we really want you to continue to develop with us. And he had kept it, and it was like 20 years he had kept it inside that. The impact you can have is remarkable. When you are in group projects, stay positive. Nobody wants to invite a Debbie Downer, and nobody wants to say, wants to hear you go, well, just to be the devil's advocate. No, that is you. Eliminate that phrase. And if you're saying that, it's because you don't feel safe. So if someone says that in a group setting with you, I want you to say, you don't need to be the devil's advocate. What's on your mind? You can say what it is you wish to say, because they're telling you they don't feel comfortable sharing their difference of opinion. You know, don't get into the drama. My granny said, those who gossip with you will gossip about you. And it is so true. Don't do it. Just stay out of it. Stay positive. Don't be a victim. You aren't. When you make yourself the victim, whether you're saying, well, at home I could do this, or my other job I did that, or those of us in Florida, we always see the bumper stickers that say, you know, up north. So don't be the victim, because when you're the victim in your mind, you're the oppressor. Nobody's making you a victim. You're the victim that you're creating, and you're oppressing yourself, and you're limiting yourself. Stay off the phone when you're around people. And remember, not everything is about you. I've given you a book reference for the 4 agreements. Not everything is about you. Our ability to really succeed in the workplace is about what we do for others. And if you really want people wondering why are they always so down around you, well, maybe you need to look in the mirror and see what that is. I mean, Zig Ziglar said, if you want to have everything in life you want, you just help other people with what they want. And it's so true, because you're building that network. You're building those relationships out. And so being consistent, building your brand, delivering on what you say, showing up when you're supposed to, all helps that. And using polite language, being punctual. By the way, jokes. Your jokes are not funny. And your jokes might even be offensive. So really just stay away from them. If you need to test them out on your parents or a mentor or your buddy, do that. But, otherwise, forget it. You're going to get yourself in trouble. Say thank you. Nice to meet you. See you at the meeting. Recognize the person. Have a good handshake. Read the room. Understand cultures, though. Not everybody will want to make eye contact, and respect office hierarchy. It doesn't mean that you can't talk to other people, but raise it with your boss first. If you diss your boss, then other people, why would they trust you if that's what you're doing with the office hierarchy? So I want to quickly hit generational miscues, because I think this is a big one for us. And I've given you a lot of words on here, but you can have them to look at afterwards. But communication style and tone, we miss this so much. It's from words to also kind of when we set meetings up and things like that. So where the younger generations, and by the way, do not allow stereotypes to come in here. Everybody has some of all of this. Overall, let's just talk what this is. So let's not go, well, you're one of them. That's how it is. This is not a hey boomer. This is not a, you're a trophy kid. This is none of that. That's like so disrespectful. Just understand that we all have these mixtures. So there's going to be words that we just don't know what they mean. There's going to be phrases that are used that we just don't know what we mean. But I really would encourage you to get away from the stare at all, if you can, or the nod, or even be able to point. Don't, stay away from all of those as you can. It really is about the tone. Where I have in here where older generations might see it being very direct, where they would, where they're accustomed to something in an email, and instead they're getting a text message. So here we go. Here we go. On feedback, yes, the movement, and I just taught about this last night in our performance management class for our HR certificate, to talk about how we are moving from traditional and into a more agile feedback cycle. We want to know, we want to course correct now. It isn't just about what am I doing right, but what am I not doing right? What am I not doing well? And how can I do it better? It isn't about, calling them out publicly and saying, this is a mess up. This is not good. But this is also saying, I might, just like the gesture show, where I might show up and say, hey, how was that? Give me your immediate feedback at what's on your mind right now, where somebody else might want to schedule an appointment or have it for their next one-on-one, or talk about it quarterly. So some of that pacing, our cadence is different. We also have some miscues about the grind, and where we might be focused on delivering outcomes. I might, log off at 5 on a Friday, where you might be the last one to leave the office. Find out, talk to your boss. What are your expectations? I grew up in a family-owned business. We live and breathe in working. That's what we do. And so it was the discussion at work table. It's the discussion at the breakfast table. And I always said to my employees, don't try to outwork me. I'm going to be here until you all leave, because I want to make sure you are safe here in the workplace. And I'm not going to leave till you do, unless I'm just not here. But, don't worry. When you have to leave, you leave, and we'll make sure, just get your work done. And we've got to have that kind of communication, but you need to talk to your boss and be able to understand what that is. So technology and problem solving, which is sort of a kickoff for our next webinar for next month, which is going to be from typewriters to TikTok, because older generations are the ones who actually have had to make the most change management in their lives, have had to have an understanding of what it means. And that's why they're so flow charted, systems driven, because they know systems help habits. But they also have been doing things like making sure, they didn't grow up with a mouse in their hand. They had to learn how to use a mouse. They needed to, weren't digital natives. They've had to move, as to what to do. Quite frankly, I'm a Mac lover. I had one of the original Macs. In fact, I have like the copper signed on the inside by Steve Jobs, which is, a pretty big deal. And so those pieces, for me, I never understood why I need to learn DOS, because I'm not going to talk the computer language. Why doesn't the computer talk to my language? I'm a big believer in that sort of technology, which is why I'm so hyped up on AI, and I just love it. So where you might see people take notes, physical notes, other people might be on their phone, but don't excessively bang on the keyboard, especially if it's a laptop. There's nothing more annoying than that. But one of the things you should know about notes is that people have a tendency to retain more when they actually write it down. Studies have shown that for college students, that when they actually take it down, the pen and paper, they actually do it more. And then transparency. I mentioned about the hierarchy, and instead, the hierarchy will be the chain of command you'll hear with perhaps those who have been in the workplace for a while, compared to somebody going, oh, aren't we just collaborating and everybody talking? You need to read the room, understand kind of the adherence to that chain in command. These are some resources to really help you thrive in the workplace, not just survive. But the first 90 days is wonderful. I've used it for years when the first edition came out. Daniel Pink, Kiss Bowers Shake Hands helps you understand cultures. It's like one page on each country. It's terrific, even if you're going to use it when you go on vacation. 4 agreements I mentioned, and you ought to read the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's just one of those. The podcast, look at the LinkedIn influencers. When I pulled up on AI, who are the LinkedIn influencers on this topic, they listed me. So I listed me. I've just never come up with a search like that. So I had to be able to share it. And then, of course, our podcast as well. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to find a mentor. I want you to get a coach. You had an SAT coach, you had a softball coach, you had a golf coach. You're better because of that. I want you to have that. Join a professional organization. Practice your little elevator speech. Practice your handshake. Practice having some chit chat. Watch people do it. Watch people when they debate. Read, listen to the podcast, but always with learning. And to be successful, Napoleon Hill said, you must be a person of action. To know is not efficient. It's necessary to both know and do. And our next date is October 15th at 12 from typewriters to TikToks. And I'm going to turn it over to Truman. And I can't believe it's 12:30 and I went through 50 plus slides.
You did a great job, and I can't believe you made it through all those slides so quickly, Kelly. Great job.
There we go.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We're going to be doing some question and answers. We implore you to please stick around and hang out. Kelly will be doing every question and answer you can ask. We've got some in the Q&A section already, so I'll start hitting those if that's good with you, Kelly.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
You lead this dance.
Yes, thank you. And for those of you asking where do we sign up for the next date, I'll be sending a follow-up email that has the invitation for the next webinar. Also, you can reach CTPE and Kelly via this QR code that is on your screen right now. In that follow-up email, I'll also have a link to how to reach out to me for the deck and the recording of this presentation. I want to clean it up and make sure everything looks quality for everyone watching, right? So Kelly, let's start with the Q&A. Give me 1 second.
Okay, I always feel like I'm on the improv, night at the improv here.
There you go.
Okay, all right. I love it. It tests me. Okay.
The first one that we'd gotten a while ago was, how do we approach the subject of hygiene with a coworker?
Yeah. So depending on the relationship, and that's why it's so important to build the relationship first. If they're like in the cube next to you and you need to build that relationship, otherwise you're going to be a complainer. And yes, sometimes it is, you go, this is an HR item. And sometimes HR and being anonymous in your complaint is worthy. But if you're up to them, say, hey, are you okay? Is everything okay? Whatever that odor is, if you will, that's coming with a hygiene, or if it's even not coming here, or you can always say, I'm headed to the restroom, I'm gonna brush my teeth after lunch. You can even kind of model the behavior that you're looking for whatever that issue is. I will share with you though, that we did have a situation where somebody was not doing so well in that capacity for about a week. And when I spoke with him, and he was pretty high up the command chain, we found out that his wife had actually told him to get out. She was moving on with somebody else, and he was living out of his car. And the only shower that was available was in the CEO's office. And he didn't have a way to shower before that happened. I mean, people were worried about him because he was disheveled. So we actually got him a gym membership for the month before he could find an apartment and get settled. And he had a place to be able to at least do that while he then found a hotel and that. So we need to understand and have some empathy as to what's the reason for it.
And somebody in the chat was just saying that they found out someone was struggling with homelessness at their job during the conversation, and they were able to give resources the same way. It's you never know what someone's going through, right?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so the next question is, how is anyone else struggling with how our new coworkers are answering phones?
Oh, okay. Well, and we haven't told them. If we haven't trained them, they're going to answer it however they wish to answer it. Yeah, so we need to tell people what it is we expect. I mean, again, I grew up in a family-owned business, so we had to answer the phone. Good evening, this is Rex residence. Who would you like to speak with? I mean, even at home, we had to do that. We had to practice. So just say what it is. How you want to answer the phone. If you need to give people a script that goes, then give it to them. But say it. I have it in some handbooks I've written for folks as to how to do it, because people don't know. But if we don't like how they're doing it, we have to look in the mirror. Did we train them how to?
The next one from Jorge: how do you navigate social and cultural norms in the workplace?
Yeah, I think back to relationships and understanding them. And then I also think, recognizing that we're people first, no matter where we came from or what we are, if you will, we're people first. And we're all working in the same place towards a vision or the mission that we all believe in. So I think if we focus on that, with the opportunity to use our values, if you can tie it back to values, saying, we need to be respectful in the workplace, but, I'm struggling with the lack of personal space you're giving me, or I'm struggling with other items, whatever that might be. But you got to have the relationship first. You can't have a conversation that helps build trust and creates vulnerability if nobody wants to talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Angela asks, do you have a presentation of professionalism for those teams that work remote full-time still?
Oh, yeah, of course. I have a presentation on whatever you want. Just talk to German.
These webinars have been a great one. Have been great. So, Paolo asks, what's the most common HR complaint from your experience?
Oh, my boss hates me, and the person next in my cube smells. Those are the ones that usually will start, or those two kind of come up, and again, they're all based on relationships. Hey, I just happened to see Seeing Truman a whole bunch about elevator approach, which is a really good topic, because the elevator means I need to be able to define who I am. When you have your own business, you need to be able to define who you are, because you're pitching your business for the length of the elevator ride. And that's why they call it the elevator pitch. And if a really good one is, there's actually a show I think called the Elevator Pitch, where they get to put their act together and then they come out to some venture capitalists and then they get to sell it from there. But they have to develop their pitch. That's what the elevator pitch is. And then those entrepreneurs or venture capitalists hear that and decide what questions they're going to have. So however you can say, you know, I'm Kelly, I'm an HR consultant, and I help small businesses and big businesses get better. And I know that when the leader gets better, everybody gets better. And so I do a lot of work with leaders. I just came up with that. That's an elevator pitch that would be helpful. Y'all helped me with that. Thank you.
We've got a few more questions if you got the time, Kelly.
Yeah, of course.
All right, this is a good one. How does one navigate accent discrimination at the workplace?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what that means. So discrimination's a really strong word. So accents can, I mean, I've had people who tell me they didn't want to hire somebody from the South because they thought they sounded stupid. So I think accents can be not just national origin accents, but it can be accents within our great country.
Regional.
So I think it is about saying, and talking with them. Again, back to the relationship, saying my ear just isn't tuned really well for it. I can tell you, I traveled a lot. I had employees in 30 countries, but I was with my CEO one time. We were in Bristol. I'll never forget this, in the UK. And this Scottish gentleman got on the elevator with us, and we smiled and we said hello. And my boss was a great mentor. And he talked to us and we laughed. And he got off. The gentleman got off. The Scottish gentleman got off the elevator. The doors closed, and I turned and looked at my boss, and he said, "I have no idea what he said." And I said, "Good." I didn't either, but we just played along with it. But the brogue was so much. But just talk to somebody. Just say, my ear's having trouble tuning with your accent. Please help me with that.
Got it. Okay. All right. We have, as an extrovert, it's pretty easy for me to connect with others. Most of my coworkers are introverts, so it seems like they're just doing their own thing. They don't even know what the function of someone doing next door, for example. What's the best way to handle this?
Yeah, well, to understand that it's their workplace. We're trying to move the mission forward, and part of that, your values could be collaboration or communication, and you go back to the values of your organization and you help them come out. Look, we are all organizational chameleons. I mean, I was a recruiter for many years, and the last thing I wanted to do was pick up the phone when I got home because I've been talking to people all day. So sometimes we need to adapt to our workplace. You might be an introvert, but you're not going to meet anybody really at home always. So you need to be able to help them. Just say, "Hey, come on, let's have lunch together." Help them learn how to do the chit chat. You're here, they're not, or maybe they are, and maybe you can help them do that. Join a Toastmasters, have a club, join a professional organization, take them with you.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right. We have one from Courtney. How do you navigate a matrix environment with two managers who move very differently? One is very fast, responsive, engaged, etc. The other is locked away and never seems to respond even after being prompted.
Then you need to look to say, how does it affect my work? And then perhaps you host the meeting with your two bosses and just say, "I just want to make sure I've got my priorities lined up for the next week. Can we just spend 15 minutes in a little huddle so I know what we need over the next week?" So one boss could be saying, "Oh, he micromanages," and the other boss might be saying, "He's just leaving him or her to flounder." So they may have perceptions of each other. It might not be you at all. It very much could be between them.
Absolutely. And okay, how do we navigate the office norms of parents having more freedom, such as leaving early, working from home, etc., while single people don't have the same options since they don't have kids?
Yeah,
it's like smokers taking smoke breaks and non-smokers.
Exactly. Exactly. I had this in there and then I took it out, but I'm going to share it here because I understand that. I always just got picked it up. Everybody else had something else in their life. I had no other life but work because I grew up that way. Their success or failure or need gives you opportunity. And so it is not, whatever they do has nothing to do with you. And the more time you spend looking at them, the less time you're focused on your career. So where I said it's not about you, your career is about you. So you choose to go, okay, I'm going to raise my hand. I'm going to learn how to do that. I'm going to talk to my boss about doing this. Be visible with it, but, then, so they are. So they are. It doesn't have anything to do with you. Just like, I had somebody the other day say, how come these nursing mothers get all these breaks? And I'm like, well, and it was a gentleman. I'm like, well, if you wish to learn to breastfeed, let's talk. Because we probably could make a whole lot of money if you learn how to do that. I said, but here's the point. If that's what is needed at this time, you might need something later on. And as someone who's a caregiver, you might need caregiving for a family member at some point. Yeah. It's about empathy and compassion in our workplace, and that's part of your values. So that's all we're trying to do, besides do what the law says.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly. We've got a couple more. Let me see. From Isabella. How do you create relationships at the workplace without tiptoeing into the personal?
Yeah, well, you ask them about what they're working on. You ask them about who they have found really helpful in the workplace. You say, you want to go to lunch? And then if it does go into the too personal, just say, oh, thanks, I'm kind of private and keeping things quiet about that. But, we're working on these same projects. I thought it'd be good. Or we both seem to be into exercise. Let's take a walk around campus or whatever that might be. There's lots of little opportunities that sometimes we just miss because we've got our head down on our phone. And not saying you do, Isabella.
Kelly, I think we may have hit the last of our questions there.
Wow, we had like 50% time in our questions
to
a 30-minute webinar.
Well, Kelly, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your wisdom. Looking forward to the next webinar, which everyone will be receiving an invitation to this week. You'll be receiving an email. You'll be receiving an email with instructions on how to request the slide deck, how to request the recording of this presentation, and an invitation to the next webinar. Kelly, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, I just want to say thank you, and I hope to see you all in October. And thank you, Truman, for making this so easy to deliver. I appreciate it.
Not a problem. And I encourage you all to please go to ctpe.usf.edu and find some HR courses that Kelly teaches, because I guarantee you'll want to take more than one. Okay.
And connect with both of us, USF, CTPE, and me on LinkedIn. We're all on there, so please do. That way you'll make sure you always have it.
Exactly. And you can find me, Truman Alfaro, at usf.edu. If you have any questions, you'll be getting an email from me in the next couple of days. Thank you, everyone, for your time. We hope to see you again soon. Have a good day.
Bye. Thank you all.